May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Some time ago, I came across one of those lists that make the circuit on email. I rarely read such lists, and even more rarely do I save them, but this one caught my eye because it was more or less descriptive of my own childhood. It was a list written by a mother exasperated by her experience of raising boys. What Were You Thinking is the title of the list, or I'll put it in the form of top 10 things I as a mother learned from raising boys. Number 10, if you hook a dog leash over a ceiling fan, the motor is not strong enough to rotate a 42-pound boy wearing a Batman underwear and Superman cape. Number 9, the leash is strong enough, however, if tied to a paint can, to spread paint on all 4 walls of your living room. Number 8, you should not throw baseballs up when the ceiling fan is on. Number 7, the glass in double-pane windows will not stop a baseball hit by a ceiling fan. Number 6, certain Legos will pass through the digestive tract of a 4-year-old boy. Number 5, a 6-year-old boy can start a fire with a flint rock even though his father contends it can only be done in the movies. Number 4, garbage bags do not make good parachutes. Number 3, no matter how much Jell-O you put in the swimming pool, you still cannot walk on water. Number 2, pool filters do not like Jell-O. And the top thing that the mother learned in raising boys, when you hear the toilet flush followed by the word, uh-oh, it's already too late. What were you thinking? I have heard that more than once in my life, and deservedly so. Sadly, not just as a foolish young boy, but from the mouths of those wiser than me, even as an adult. I have a hunch that Simon's mother-in-law was thinking something along those lines. What were you thinking, boys? I mean, here she was, sick in bed, and in comes Simon, the boy who had left his family, his home, to run off with this crazy man, Jesus, who was talking of a new kingdom and all. But then out of the blue, here he comes again, and he has brought several friends with him into my home. It's my home, and here I am, sick in the bed with a fever. What do they want me to do? I'm in no shape to entertain these people. What were they thinking? And if that's not enough, apparently this friend of theirs, Jesus is his name, he apparently has attracted quite a following. He's been healing people and driving out demons, as odd as that is, speaking with authority in the synagogue, as scary as that is. So now the whole city is knocking on my door, wanting to come into my home to see this man, Jesus. What were they thinking? She tried to rise from the bed, but her pounding head, the body aches, the press of the fever restrained her from moving. She was going nowhere, guess or no guess. We who live in the age of antibiotics and modern medicine do not fully share the same sense of concern that comes when a fever sets in and there is no treatment. With grown men as sons-in-law, this woman was probably well beyond the life expectancy of a woman in her time. She and her family would have known well, keenly known, that this fever may well signal the end of her days. But then Jesus enters her room. That's a scandalous act in and of itself, by the way, and comes to her bedside. I wonder what words were exchanged between these strangers who shared that intimate moment. We're not told, only that he took her by the hand and lifted her up. Lifted her up. And you may be interested to know that the verb that's translated here is lifted up is the same verb that's used elsewhere in the Gospels to describe the resurrection, the being lifted up from death. The exact same verb. To be lifted up is to arise. To live in the resurrected of Christ, life of Christ, is to have Jesus come, take us by the hand, and lift us up. But for what purpose? Well, the woman arises, healed by her affliction, and began to serve her guests. Upon arising, she serves. Is that not the pattern for our lives as Christians as well? To be touched and transformed by the experience of the holy, to be invited into the resurrection life of Christ so that we might arise and serve God by serving others. Call it fate or chance. Call it serendipity, synchronicity. Call it a miracle. Call it God's master plan. Call it whatever you like. But something special happened when this feverish woman and a healer met and shared a touch. How different do you think this woman's opinion of Jesus would have been had she not been in bed with a fever? Without that touch, he might have been nothing more to her than the man who took her sons away and got them killed. But with the touch, with that touch, well, her life is changed, made new. She has been lifted up. And isn't that what we're all seeking? To be made new, to be lifted up, to be touched by the holy hand of God in some mysterious and yet healing way. And let me be clear, I'm not talking specifically about physical healing here. That's a mystery. It occurs for some. I don't understand it. But being touched by God can yield healing in ways that we could never ask for or imagine. I began this sermon with a list of crazy antics conjured up by young boys in the course of being young, foolish boys. What were they thinking? I'm not advocating such puerile ideas that tend to be destructive or injurious. But I am convinced that the same creative spirit of our childhood that dreams of possibility burns still in each of us. It's been tamped down in so many ways, but the coals are still there. And when used for good, can give rise to truly holy experiences that change the very way we look at life. There is a longing deep inside each of us, a longing to experience the touch of God in our lives. The rest of the world has it too. Our job as the church, as the people of God, it seems to me, is to dream. To dream in the tradition of the great dreamers of the Bible. We don't always have to get it right. We just have to be faithful that God is in the thick of whatever it is that we're up to. And whatever we try should bear the purpose of seeking and serving Christ in all persons. Who are you called to be? Whom are you called to serve? Ever since I was a resident physician in my 20s, when sleep was a luxury not often granted in the measure of hours, ever since then my sleep patterns have been erratic. When I am awake in the wee hours of the morning now, I've found it a rich time of thought and dream and prayer. I found that in that still, quiet place, it's often then that new ideas of ministry and mission arise for myself and for you. I wonder if it would work what if we tried this or that? It may not make sense by worldly standards of power and prestige for us to try this or that, but how might God's grace and love be experienced in new, transformative ways because we're willing to try something new? Oh, someone somewhere will likely utter those words. What were they thinking? But that's okay, you see. That's okay, because I'm sure people said that of Jesus time and again as he went about his ministry of loving people in radically countercultural ways. What was he thinking? And yet, how has the world been transformed over and again because of his life? Surely the same thing was said when the disciples left to follow Jesus. To many who watched, the only sensible response to such impetuosity was, what were they thinking? But we, you and I, who have inherited the legacy of their faithful response, can sit here this morning and proclaim that the world changed for the better because of those disciples' decisions. God used them for good. Is it just possible that if we go about this work of dreaming faithfully, then maybe, just maybe, we'll discover that God has a hand in that dream as well, that God might just be using our offering for good? Are you open to consider that in your life? Perhaps your life will be changed, touched by the holy hand of God, that you might be lifted up and made new in some way that is at once mysterious, perhaps miraculous, certainly life-giving. Perhaps it may be that in arising to serve others, that they too might just experience the gracious touch of a healing God in their lives, lifting them up to new life as well. May God give us the courage to dream, the strength to arise, and the resolve to serve in ways that glorify God and mediate God's blessings in the world. Amen.